Hello, my name is J. O. Sanders. I am an actor and an ally of the community which we are going to speak with today. I'm very excited to be here. I'm a great admirer of these people and have listened to them speak before on panels. I have a son who has Tourette's and is very involved in Tourette's awareness. Jamie Sanders, also a professional actor. And he has helped make me aware through my life gradually with the many things that I don't know. So my interest, my involvement, my curiosity is piqued by being with this group of very interesting, very talented people. Today, I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves and describe themselves. And also we have two interpreters, signers in the room, one of whom is going to speak for our member who identifies as deaf. Yes, is that correct? I am going to turn it over. Let's start with Christine and hear who this panel is made up of.
Hi, I'm Christine Bruno, and I am an actor, a teaching artist, and a disability inclusion consultant. I identify as a person with a mobility disability. Specifically, I have cerebral palsy. I am a petite white woman, cisgendered. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I have short brown curly hair that's pulled back with a hairband. I'm wearing red glasses. I am wearing a fuchsia colored sweater. I'm sitting on a bench in front of a blue wall, and I am inhabiting the land of the Lenape people. And I'm excited to be here today.
And Gardiner?
Hello, my name is Gardiner Comfort. I'm really happy to be here. I'm an actor, a writer, a New York City tour guide, and a college professor. I have Tourette Syndrome, diagnosed when I was 7 years old. That's one of my symptoms. I have a solo show about my life with Tourette's called The Elephant in Every Room I Enter. Pronouns are he, him, his. I'm wearing glasses. I'm a 40-year-old Caucasian man with short brown hair that I got cut today. It's very fashionable. And according to J Haddad, I am very handsome. And I'm wearing a black shirt, and I'm very excited to be here.
Ryan.
Hi, I'm Ryan J. Haddad. I am an actor, playwright, and autobiographical solo performer. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am typically based in New York, but I have been quarantined in the swing state of Ohio, where I will be casting my vote for president. I am a Lebanese American man with short black hair with streaks of gray in it, blue glasses, light blue t-shirt. I'm wearing headphones, and I have a navy backdrop behind me. And I am in Cleveland, Ohio, Parma, Ohio, which is also formerly the land or the stolen land of the Erie people.
Sophia.
Thank you, Jay. Hey, everybody. My name is Sofiya Cheyenne. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an actress, dancer, teaching artist, disability advocate. I wear many hats. I identify as mixed race, cisgendered woman. I have a disability. Let me start that over again. I identify as a mixed race, cisgendered woman, and I have dwarfism, a rare dwarfism that is called, good luck interpreters, spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia congenita. And I am sitting in I'm catty-cornered in my bedroom. which is littered with baby things because I just gave birth to my son. But I also, thank you. I also have long curly hair. I'm wearing a maroon tank top. I'm wearing headphones, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Alexandria.
Hi, everybody. It is really an honor to be a part of this conversation. So thank you for inviting me. My name is Alexandria Wales, and I identify she, her, hers. And I'm living in New York City. Right now I'm in New Jersey, actually, because of the quarantine. I'm originally from Delaware. So I have Biden pride happening. Look at me. Yeah, I'm half black and half white, cisgender female with dark curly hair, shoulder length, and light skinned. My top is a weird sort of grayish green color, and my background is a wine maroon color. And I have a very colorful blanket behind me that is sitting on the bench beside me. So, and today we have two amazing interpreters with us. The person who's speaking for me now is Lynnette Taylor. And with us, we also have Candace Broecker, Penn. So thank you both for being with us today to interpret. Oh, and also I should mention, what I do. Yes, I'm a woman with many hats as well. I'm a director, actor, and I'm starting to be a playwright, a dancer, a choreographer, and definitely a supporter of disability rights and an advocate when I'm in the room.
Do we want to get a description? I'm behind in that I didn't describe myself, so I will catch up. But do our interpreters want to give a visual picture of themselves? No, you want to disappear. They are human blue screens. Let me catch up by saying I am an actor, writer, director. I have many books behind me, because hopefully reflecting my continuing curiosity, which extends to this panel. I am a 14-year-old masquerading in a 67-year-old's body, 6'4". I'm enormous, but very approachable. My hair is curly. It once was very blonde. It then got dark and now is mostly white. I'm wearing a blue kind of cool shirt that I just got recently, and am again just overwhelmingly pleased to be here, part of this group and moderating. I hope not to get in the way and to be able to add some things in the way of questions and framing that we prepared to go deeper into all of this. To which point, let me begin by framing with some information here that we've discussed. Christine and I have been on top of all of this, trying to find a place to start. But for those of you who are maybe less familiar with the situation of this community, 1 in 4 Americans identify as having a disability. That's approximately 62 million, or 25%. We are the largest minority. By we, I mean this group is the largest minority in the US, but the most underrepresented in the industry. Only 5% of the characters on television are characters with disabilities. Of that 5%, only 2% are played by disabled actors. Disabled people, and again, I'm sure we will find other terms and preferable ways of referring to disability and the finer points of what that means, have more than $21 billion in discretionary income. And disability is the only club that anyone can join at any time. So given that, I would like to begin getting you kicked off by assuming that we have the ear of the Biden-Harris campaign team and perhaps Biden and Harris themselves. And I'd like to start with asking, what do you feel is the most urgent matters and ideas for them to know or address with regard to the disability community? Anyone is free to start. See, the ideas are raging through the group. Christine, you and I spoke only last night or the night before, and I'd love to get you to help me kick this off.
Sure. I was intentionally holding back because I am often the person who speaks the most in these conversations because of my hat of disability activist inclusion consultant. So I was intentionally holding back, but I'm totally happy to kick it off. I've been thinking a lot about this because I think the way that you framed the question is really important. What's most urgent, assuming we have the ear of Vice President Biden and Senator Harris and the campaign team. And I had two things that I wanted to say. And Ryan, if I step on yours, please elaborate.
Okay.
Because Ryan and I had a little conversation last night. So I had two things. Number one, I think one is an immediate need from the community, and the other is a larger need of the community that the immediate need can be filled by looking at the larger need. So I'll start with the most immediate need. I think right now, particularly given the events of last night, and by last night, I know this is going to be aired at a later date, but by last night, I mean the first debate, and also the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. What does that mean for our community in the immediate? Well, right now, we know that it absolutely means looking at the total repealing of the ACA, right? Obamacare. So I think our most immediate need is access to comprehensive, affordable health care that meets the needs of the PWD community so that we have what we need to live our lives fully, not just live our lives but to live our lives fully and comprehensively. And Ryan, I'm going to let you talk more about that when we get there. And I think the second thing, the thing that I think the most about, that I think is the change agent for everything, is how we look at disability. We need a radical shift in the way that we look at disability and disabled people, right? We need to stop looking at disability through a medical lens, which means we need to stop looking at disability as a diagnosis, but instead as a lived experience and a culture, right?
Right.
And that will build upon the principle of nothing without us, means that everything that happens in our society, disabled people should be included in every conversation that relates to society, not just the ones that relate to our communities. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense to me.
Christine, would you mind? I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're a very active activist on social media. Mm-hmm. And I recall upon watching the not Republican but Democratic convention, you had a very interesting, pointed, and important critique. Would you mind sharing that here?
Absolutely. So my main critique of the convention, a lot of which I loved, and I'll speak specifically to the inclusion of diversity. There was a lot of inclusion of folks from marginalized groups, folks of color, not so much of trans folks. I would have liked to have seen more of that. But when it came to disability, I was very dismayed and disappointed that all of the inclusion of disability during the 4 nights of the Democratic debate was all
convention.
Thank you. Democratic convention was all geared toward disability as a diagnosis and leaned heavily on the use of disability as a diagnosis and inspiration porn. So it was all seen through a non-disabled lens, which meant when I look at the Addie Barkan, the disability activist who uses augmentative technology to speak. When we looked at that, we were looking at him through the idea of inspiration, through the idea of a non-disabled lens, rather than looking at disability as I said, as a lived experience, as a culture. Disabled people work. We have full, vibrant lives. Those of us on this platform today, we're all professional artists, right? So we're not just there to serve the world as symbols, right? As individuals that are pitied or, only seen through the lens of a medical diagnosis. We are fully realized human beings with lives.
Christine, you use the comparison or the variable of sympathy and empathy.
Yes.
And I thought that was very strong to recognize the difference between somebody saying, isn't that too bad, or aren't they doing well considering, as opposed to let me stand in their shoes and go, oh, here's a life.
Yes.
That makes it completely valid and just as one-on-one as you would with any other person you would meet.
Right. Absolutely.
Extremely important. And I thought that was an excellent way to put it for someone who is coming to this without the same experience, but trying to stand in those shoes and to understand better.
Right. Yeah. Because I think one thing that happens, even though we're the largest minority in the country, and I use minority in quotes because I don't particularly like that term, but we haven't really come up with a better one that encapsulates. I find that non-disabled people, and this is no criticism of non-disabled people, tend to look at things through a non-disabled lens. That happens with all marginalized communities, right? So Caucasian people are going to look at things through a Caucasian lens, right? And I think if the empathy part is turning it in ourselves and trying to look at it through somebody else's lived experience, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're big on sympathy, but we're short on the empathy, really going to the point of really trying to look at it through a person's lived experience.
I'm gonna do the piggybacking and expand on what Christine asked me to expand on based on our conversation yesterday. But I also want to touch on something Jay said at the very top, which is finding words that feel appropriate to us to describe ourselves and our identity. There are choices to be made. There are preferences. There's not a one-size-fits-all answer. But what I want to impress is that the word disabled as an adjective and identifier is not a bad word. Disability is not a bad word. My 80-something-year-old great uncle, who I love and adore, said to me on the phone on Sunday, "My nephew is not disabled. He is challenged." And I said, no. I understand what you are trying to say, but actually disability is something to be proud of. The word disabled is something to be proud of. Just as I would say I'm a gay man, I'm going to say I'm a disabled man. And it's different. It's different for everybody. For the deaf community, they don't always use the term disability to identify themselves. So that is why we, as a larger group, like to say deaf and disabled, because there are two pathways there. I was corrected by my own brother a week ago, who said, no, it's person with a disability. That's what my wife, who's a physical therapist, tells me. And I said, okay, but that's something that they've taught us in school. That is something that we're taught in school, but it's not necessarily the way that the community sees ourselves. And it's not up to you to decide how I choose to identify. Because it makes you more comfortable, or you think it's more appropriate or not. So that's really important. And I thank you, Jay, for giving the space to that right at the top. And now to the topic of healthcare. Fully, disability is a social, cultural identity, doesn't need to be boxed in medically as a diagnosis. However, we are people with medical needs that continue throughout our lives from the point at which we are become disabled, whether that's at birth or after birth. And when we say comprehensive, and also I want to acknowledge that we are all artists. We're all here because we're on Broadway for Biden because we are performing artists in some capacity or another, which usually means one of two things or three things. We either are getting our health care because we have a spouse with a different kind of job, or we're on the Affordable Care Act, or we are fortunate enough to have made the designated amount of money or worked the designated number of weeks for our unions in the arts to give us health care, which is a toss-up and can change from year to year and 6 months to 6 months and quarter to quarter. So first of all, the Affordable Care Act is so important because while I'm currently on SAG-AFTRA health insurance, April 1st, I'm going to have to switch to the Affordable Care Act if something doesn't change, at this moment. And if the Affordable Care Act is gone, I don't know what I'm going to do. So we need healthcare, but also we need, and I think this encompasses all humans, I do, but especially the disabled community. We need a healthcare process and health insurance processes that are efficient and expedited. Because I personally walk with a walker. I wear leg braces. The leg braces need to be replaced every 2 years. The walker needs to be replaced every 3, 4, 5 years. I know and have many friends in power chairs. I have many friends with prosthetic limbs. I have friends who need personal care attendants to help them live their daily lives and do like very basic daily necessity things. And all of that is funneled through health insurance. And to be approved for those things, you not only have to meet a ton of really bureaucratic, scary, am I going to make it criteria, you also have to wait for years, sometimes years, for approval. And if you're in a motorized wheelchair and it's broken, you don't have years. You need one in a half hour. You need one tomorrow. You don't need one next year. And if you don't have the means to pay out of pocket, then how on earth are you supposed to survive? It's really a major problem. And I don't think it's as much of a partisan issue, because it's an issue that has lasted through myriad of administrations, both Republican and Democrat. So it's something that needs to be addressed. And I would recommend a wonderful film by my friend Rachel Handler from the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge. I don't have the name off the top of my head, but it was a beautiful documentary and eye-opening.
I think it's called How Much Am I Worth?
How much am I worth?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful.
That's all I have to say at this moment.
Excellent.
I'll jump in really quick and just say that I couldn't agree more with what Christine and Ryan have said. And I think that it's funny, we were talking about diagnosis, and when I introduced myself, I actually said my particular type of dwarfism. And I did that on purpose because within my community and the dwarf community, there's such a lack of knowledge that exists that I have a rare type. And I don't look like what most people see, little people or dwarfs on TV. So I feel a need to share that part of myself because I want to name it and say, I have dwarfism, but I have this type of dwarfism, and I'm trying to educate in that way, right? So it's really a culture shift that we need, but all of these other things that come with having a disability, like health insurance, are also really important things that we need to push. So I just want to echo what everyone said. That's all
Excellent.
And Alexandria is saying, I want to just chime in with this brilliant discussion. It's a great conversation. I would just like to say that, we're among the most underemployed members of society. And so many of us are so beyond ready to work. And so so eager to work, but we have so many barriers, and those barriers have been in existence for a long time that don't allow us to have actual employment, to be able to afford insurance, to be able to make repairs, to be able to continue our lives as we need to do, like paying bills, the basic necessities. So I think that we really need to look at where the representation is lacking and where we really need to improve the representation, not just on screen and stage, but also behind the camera, behind the scenes, as board members, as trustees. We need to have a vertical movement, not just horizontal. I mean, why aren't we seeing more teachers, professors on a university level, and people of all ages in different spheres? Where are they? We're just invisible. There are so many opportunities out there, but there are so many obstacles, and some of these obstacles have not changed. I think it's great that we need to look at it with a new lens. I think we need to see what actions we need to take to make changes. For me personally, at this moment, I have health insurance at the moment because I'm working as an actor. I'm in a union, so I get partial coverage from that, but that's fortunate. So, after 6 months, what's going to happen to that? And as you pointed out, we have these cycles, and I just go, well, the system's broken. I guess I just wait for the next job.
And if I need to repair my hearing aid, that is going to take time and money.
And so what are we doing with all this disregard of our needs? I need to live my life fully. These are things I need to live my life fully. And yet these resources aren't available, and they're systemic. The system is not set up to allow for sort of different ways of entry, different ways of receiving information. It's the access. You go through a website. Oh, maybe the website's not available. Maybe, or they're outdated. And so if I want to reach out to, let's say, I don't know, the unemployment office, if I type it in and they give me a number, the phone number is only useful for a TTY, which is outdated technology. No one has a TTY anymore. So you don't even really have access. It's just the faux access, right? So now we use video relay, but we find all these obstacles because they don't want to go through an interpreter to get to have these conversations. So New York State, it actually is one of the more advanced websites, but this is only New York State. What's happening in the rest of the country? You can't even access these governmental bureaucratic systems. I think we need to work locally to lift, these services, to lift our community so that we get access to them.
Alexandria and I were both working a year ago at the Public Theater. She was doing For Colored Girls on one side of the theater, and I was doing the Michaels on the other. She gave a beautiful, beautiful performance, I should say. And hopefully is somebody who will be cast often and regularly and help pay for her health care, as with all of us. There was also...
Thank you.
You had said, Christina, talking about the awareness of the history of disability rights movement, that being a part of sewing that into... integrating that into an awareness in society, that people know and learn about that it is simply known information included in who we are and what we do, that would also help people recognize this is part of their world as well, even if it's not their world specifically from their experience.
Right. Right.
And I think that's a very, very interesting place to go. There is some, in terms of integrating where, what you're saying with people in vertically into so many parts of society, if you understand where all of this, where the history of this has been and where it goes, also might help people thinking ahead who are not living a disabled life, but saying, but what about this? That you're considering it without necessarily having that be your culture of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I think that instilling ourselves in the larger community, the neurotypical, what have you, the entire community. Obviously, where our goal is to include ourselves in many important ways and to advocate for ourselves. But Jay, what you just mentioned made me think that yes, everyone benefits when everyone is included, and I think specifically for people with disabilities, and I can really only speak for myself, is people often are inspired towards thinking that relates so much to their own thinking as neurotypical people. In my experience, when I share my own neurodiverse experience, or when I perform about my life with Tourette's, people afterwards relate to it in ways that they never dreamed they could, or even in some cases thought, well, you know what? I think I actually realized what this thing is that I never really knew was different from other people that I have in my mind, and maybe I should go get it looked at or figured out. I think everyone is served when our voices, our very unique and important voices, are part of the larger conversation.
Well, I think the integration of, when you look at, you say, I'm having a dinner party. Does anybody have any allergies? Does anybody have any, do you not eat red meat? Do you have to be careful of certain kinds of things? There are people who can't eat grains, people with peanut allergies, something like that. The fact that we take that care, we say, who are you? I need to know you better in order to be close and live with you. Why should it not involve everything? Why should it not involve simply, who specifically are you? I know your name. I know what you look like. I know my impression of you, but as I come to know you, there are all these other things. And God knows people have diabetes. People have, that they have to check regularly. People have heart problems. People have survived cancer and are living with things like that. Why shouldn't there be the same open awareness saying there are simply more things to consider? And I think we're all intelligent enough to keep that in the range and depth of field of what it means to be alive and to be human. That said, yes, let me hand it on again to Christine here.
Well, I just want to build on something you just said, because I think that's an input to add another point to what's happening now in the country. I think there's so much talk of COVID preparedness, about the after effects of COVID, and there's so much talk about those with pre-existing conditions. And I find it curious that disability is never mentioned in those conversations. Cancer is mentioned. That is a disability under the ADA, but we're talking about acquired disabilities that affect daily life that are not cancer, or for those, all of us, we're born with our disabilities or acquired our disabilities very early in life. Those things seem to be absent from the conversation. And I know, because I read the literature, that the campaign is talking about how their COVID plan will encompass people with disabilities, but I would like to see more discussion amongst on the campaign trail, and then as the administration, to encompass disabled folks in conversation, so that because I feel like we're getting lost in the conversation, right? So when people are talking about the repeal of the ACA, I've heard cancer, asthma, diabetes, COVID-related lung scarring. I've not heard anything about anyone who's blind or low vision, anyone who's deaf, anyone who has a mobility disability, or is a little person who has Tourette's or any kind of learning disability. And I wonder where that disconnect is. I don't think it's purposeful. I just think it's a function of, we are often thought of as an afterthought.
It's education.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this panel is about, right? Awareness and education.
And I also think what you said about disability, teaching the disability history in schools is so important. And I think it's important for our industry, because if we start teaching disability history, just as if we start teaching accurate history of of civil rights, of all civil rights for Black people, the civil rights movements of all marginalized groups. If we really start integrating that in our education system, then we as performers won't have to work so hard to start getting that message out. We can work on telling more nuanced stories because we're starting from a base level of knowledge, that everybody has a base level of knowledge that they learned in school. Exactly. Rather than having to start, 101 storytelling because people don't know the basics.
I couldn't agree more, and I just want to jump in and say I'm sure you all have heard of the recent documentary Crip Camp that came out, and that I hope for people that didn't know anything about disability rights or any of the history that existed, that it brought a new sense of awareness of our community and how powerful and how long we've been around and been fighting for these things. And, in my personal experience with that documentary, what's really interesting is my parents watched it, and all of a sudden there was like a new level of understanding of me that they didn't have before. And this is not a knock on my parents at all. They've done a great job and I love them. But it really did help give them something to hold on to about disability history and how it has absolutely been a fabric of America and of our country, that we are a community that's been here for a long time, and we've been fighting for the equal education, equal access for a long time, and to make sure that that is something that we talk about and is a norm, that it isn't something like, oh wow. I think that is so important, and it will only uplift the next generation.
Let me say too, as someone from, I keep saying outside, but I don't mean outside. I mean adjacent to. I mean living with. From my position, I've been a huge fan and friend of Heidi Latsky's dance company, GIMP.
Yes.
And the very first effort that she made with that was working with a woman who was born with no legs, who asked her and had done many acrobatic shows and things, and she asked Heidi to choreograph something for her, and Heidi did something where she walked on, sat down, took off her legs, and danced. And the whole notion, the most important part of that bled over into the building of a dance company which still exists, and which I still on the advisory board of and go to watch religiously, is the notion of look at me. I am here. You are welcome to look at me. Having cystic fibrosis, walking down the street, people say, I know people don't want to look at me. Like, I don't want to embarrass you, and I don't want to feel embarrassed because I don't know what our relationship is. You bring that person on the stage, as with performers we do, we step out and we are naked in that we are being looked at. Not naked specifically, but you know what I mean, that we are making ourselves vulnerable by saying, look at me. This is me. I'm here. And I'm fine with this, and I'm fine being in this room with you looking at me. And when we share that with our brothers and sisters of various abilities, we learn something. We learn to be okay with that. We are invited to watch, and we get to know by watching, rather than saying, no, I won't embarrass you, or you won't embarrass me, or, we have to get beyond that, it seems to me, in order to get into talking about just, hey, let's take a walk. Hey, how are you? I recognize you as you walk past me on the street, rather than a separation that happens out of not knowing how to address these things. And I found that hugely instructive and lovely. I mean, I felt vulnerable from being invited to share their vulnerability. I offer that as from my position. I don't know what any of you have as reaction to that.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, Gardner. I was just going to say that two of us on this call, on this Zoom, Alexandria more than I, have worked with Heidi. So just to make that tie, but I didn't mean to jump on you.
Yeah.
No. Just briefly, I think that's great, Jay, and I think that's a really important and easily surmountable obstacle. You know, that I think a lot of well-meaning non-disabled people encounter, and in my experience, it's I really enjoy being able to put people at ease, and by saying, one, I'm perfectly happy to talk about this as much as you want. I'm happy to talk about myself, and also we can't all necessarily be expected to have be completely adherent to every new terminology. I guess I think we should strive for that, but I think it's important that people deserve to be let off the hook from some level of ignorance, and then educated and encouraged, and then everyone is hopefully more at ease and then conversational as a
and
result.
then it comes, and that there's an opportunity for invitation. I had a friend, a playwright, wonderful playwright named John Hopkins, who wrote "Find Your Way Home" years ago. Was married to Shirley Knight, who just left us this last year. Great loss. But he had a withered hand, and when he would meet someone, he would lead with his. Many people who have a withered hand would use their stronger hand as to shake hands. He would lead with his hand as if to say, "This is me, and I'm okay with this." He would invite you into who he was and what he was living with, and immediately you were beyond it, and immediately you felt you were being included in his vulnerability, and it made you feel vulnerable. And I always admired that, and I took great. I met him back when I was 24 years old, and I've always thought of that, of leading with my vulnerability rather than leading with my strength.
It's very much an actor thing too. Follow the fear. It's terrifying to get out on stage, but it's also adrenalizing and rewarding as an artist.
There's also another way to look at that too. That for him, that might not have been his vulnerability. That might have been something he considered his strength.
So, Alexandria, what are your thoughts here?
Yes, we were just talking about vulnerability, and I personally worked with Heidi Latsky for several years. I was part of the original in display. So as we started to work together in site-specific choreography, this piece was oriented around that. It was the idea of an invitation, inviting people to be part of the conversation, to be able to experience this sort of shared interaction. It was very powerful. As an artist, as a person who often works in different consulting venues, as a director of artistic sign language, and there's such a difference between television, film, and stage productions. Often the first things that happen when I meet a group of people behind the scenes is to remind them to shift their fear into curiosity, into embracing the unknown, and not to be ashamed of your embarrassment or of looking foolish or things like that, because that's often an obstacle for people. They don't want to look embarrassed. They don't want to admit what they don't know. But your lived experience and my lived experience are different. I don't know where you're from, and you don't know where I'm from. So it's now my turn to say, I'm part of your space. You need to recognize me as part of your space. And if not, we're never going to gain from the human experience. And what I've seen from Biden and Harris is that they're both individuals, and they both surround themselves with people who have that kind of compassion. They have empathy. And Biden is, very outspoken about what he doesn't know and willing to learn and embrace the new. He's willing to listen. And I think that's a huge a fantastic sign of a good leader, which is what we need in our new leadership position. We've spent the past 4 years in a dark place. We need some light.
Well said. Well said. Ryan, you had a thought.
Yes. Yes. I want to amplify what Alexandria just said and add that it isn't just when deaf and disabled people walk into a room as the one person who is deaf and disabled. It's also among ourselves. You know, just because we are part of the community doesn't mean we understand every single experience, doesn't mean that we also don't get caught and have the fear or put up a wall about something we don't know or an identity or an experience we don't know. We are constantly learning and evolving year after year. I mean, when I think of when I first arrived in New York to now, my knowledge of what access actually means and what inclusion actually means has increased 100-fold because of a lot of the people on this call and because of many, many other people who couldn't be here today, you know. And so we are not exempt from the growth ourselves, right, and from the learning about our own community. And I think that's probably true for other communities too. Just because you are part of a group that is othered doesn't mean that you don't do othering in your own sphere. And it is from fear. It is from the unknown. It is from a resistance to meeting someone else as a human to human interaction and a sharing of humanity. And if we are the party that preaches liberal ideas and inclusion and acceptance, we have to acknowledge our own imperfections and work towards changing those things too. It's not just one side versus the other. It's growth within ourselves. And another thing that we were speaking of just slightly earlier was when we were talking about the power of art and the power of stories, the power of education about disability history and all kinds of other facets of history. Well, we have a president right now who wants to eliminate diversity and sensitivity training, and by extent, and wants to adjust education so that it's very white-centric and very, very male-centric, very patriarchal. That's not how you say that word, but very centered on the patriarchy, and not leaving room for women, not leaving room for Black people and people of color, Indigenous people, not leaving room for disabled people or LGBTQ people. And it starts with youth. It starts with, what do we know about, what are we learning about each other? Because children are not built to hate. Children are not built to behave like the President of the United States is behaving right now. And when we have parents, conservative parents, who are encouraging their small children to act as puppets and purport support of Trump and Pence, that's absurd. Because children don't have that hate in their heart. They don't have that fear in their hearts. And also, if we had broader disability education from a young age, disabled people would also know how to see themselves in a more progressive, empowered, sexy. I mean, if they're in elementary school, they don't really care about sexy, but you know, a really exciting way, because parents still, to this day, when a child is born and a child is different than what they expected, there are those pangs of regret. There are those pangs of unknown, uncertainty, fear. That's completely normal and probably would continue till the end of time. But once you get over that, and let's hope you do it quickly, it is your job to instill pride in your child so that they don't have to wait until they move to New York and become an adult to learn about their own identity, or wait until a movie like Crip Camp comes out and like, oh, there it is for the first time in my adult life. Why did it take so long?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It seems to me fear and ignorance is the word, but to break it down in a way that doesn't seem like an assault, fear and what we don't know are the biggest enemies of everything in the world, and that children don't worry about what they don't know. If there's a dark corner, they put a light into it, or they run into it and throw themselves against the wall. Whoa! It's they know no fear, and I think if we are to invite the world, all of the otherdom includes every member of this race, and by race I mean humanity. If those people are all to be invited, we are all on the way to making the world better. And now it seems to me that Biden and Harris are going after that, which is why I personally stand with them. I was very, very impressed to look on their website and see how much proactive stuff about disability, and the word aggressive pursuit of making change, of making a difference, of finding a better way, of learning more, of teaching more. It's all over their website and proposed, rather than, oh yes, we'll put something up there when we figure out something nice to say. They recognize, from what I see, they recognize that the need is there. And I applaud that. I wonder what the rest of you guys see.
I was just to piggyback off that, I was going to say about words, like the words that I see on the website are protect, strengthen, expand. We're talking about employment. We're talking about strong ADA compliance, all of these things that are really necessary for our community to be empowered. And I can't echo enough what Ryan said. Like, you just hit all the points I wanted to hit, and it's so true, because when it comes to representation, and this is why I'm an artist, how important it is to never stop that learning. Back to what you said, Jay, is that we can't, the fear of the unknown, everyone has it. It's fine. We just have to be okay with learning about otherness and about things that are something different than us. And there's once we come on to the other side of that, the amount of love and community and compassion that could exist for us as a human race it's life-changing, and it really could bring this country to a whole nother level. So it's that empowerment that our community needs, that I think we all strive for as artists, that is so important, that I think Biden and Harris bring to me personally.
For me, I'm really excited by the fact that Joe Biden has been a public servant for 47 years, right? And he's constantly evolving. Like, it gives me such joy to see that he is, I use this expression a lot, and it's a little flip, but I really mean it. You don't know what you don't know, right? But he's constantly seeking to learn. He's admitted many of his past mistakes, and choosing Kamala Harris as his running mate is a big step toward recognizing the change that needs to happen in this country. And I feel heartened that both of them, Vice President Biden and Senator Harris, will be allies to our community. And one of the reasons why I think it was so important to have you as a moderator today, Jay, as a non-disabled white man, is because our community does need allies. We need allies because of the fear that we've all been talking about. There's a lot of fear around disability, right? So I think we need allies, particularly, and also because our communities are so fragmented, because there are many disabilities encapsulated within our community. This doesn't apply so much, and Alexandria, please correct me if I'm wrong, to the deaf community, because as Ryan was saying earlier, a lot of deaf folks don't consider themselves disabled because it's being deaf has its own culture, right? So, but because we're so fragmented, I think allyship is incredibly important for our communities. And I see that in the Biden-Harris team.
And what infuriates me right now with the whole, and let me say as an older white male, is what infuriates me about the entire Trump direction that things have gone, and there are many people behind him who are going the same way, is a willful ignorance. And that it is an entire culture of people who refuse to say they don't know something, refuse to embrace something, a way of learning, refuse to see that they have to change, that they need to change, as we all do. And that the notion that they don't know everything is somehow an assault on them, rather than an obvious step that we should each be taking every single day. And to present that sort of non-leadership is something we really desperately need to get beyond.
Amen.
I would counter and say that I don't know. I would counter and say that I don't know that Trump is ignorant per se. I think he knows exactly what he's doing, and he has pulled the wool over everyone who is his followers, and they are just taking every morsel of what he says as the truth, even if it changes from day to day and hour to hour. They don't care. They refuse to hold him accountable. They have really been fooled by this man who, it's heartbreaking because that isn't going to go away. If he is not reelected, his followers are still going to feel emboldened by I don't think it's willful ignorance for him. Maybe for his followers who don't want to fact check, maybe for his followers who bow at his feet. But I think he knows how to rile people up. He knows how to create fear where there need not be fear, create divisiveness where there shouldn't be divisiveness. And he bullied Joe Biden during that debate last night to the point where you saw Joe was trying to cope with that stutter. He was trying to hold it in, and the bullying and interruption was a tactic to knock Joe off his game.
Right.
It was clearly intentional. You could tell right away. I'm sorry, Ryan. But you could tell right away, oh, this is a tactic Trump prepared for.
Well, I think that, again, I agree with you fully, but I do think he is a man who is bizarrely incapable of empathy. I think there's a gene missing. And empathy, true empathy, is where we truly learn.
Yes.
He may put on your shoes and all he'll go is, oh, those aren't my shoes. Step out of it and move on. He is not interested in learning. So he does not, there are tactics that go on to get everybody to follow him, which is just, do whatever I tell you to do. I agree with that completely. Yeah. But his inability to empathize is a disaster. Well, I shouldn't say a disaster because he's used up that word entirely. It is unfathomable to those of us who naturally do. Yeah. How could someone? You almost wish him COVID simply to experience it, get through it, and then say, "Oh my God, there's a terrible disease out there." But I don't see, if he doesn't experience it, it doesn't exist, and that's not. Anyway, nothing profound, and I don't think it's anything that all of you don't see already. Alexandria, yes.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that the current administration has been deliberate deliberately irresponsible. It is intentional. I mean, they're using the fear tactics. They're using different ways to divide people, to factionalize us, to, get strength among his followers, to build them to become a bolder community. I think that with Biden and the Harris ticket, when they win, I'm saying when they win, yes, this is not over. I am going to go, yes, they will do it. We have to do the work, but we have to be accountable to keep just the reflourishing of our community, of our allyship, of educating. I mean, that is ongoing. It's ongoing work. And this sense of life, has to be a life that everyone wants to live. We can't live in a world where, this is better than nothing, or this is good enough. We can't be complacent. We can't accept something less than. This is the end of the conversation. It is time to make things better for everyone. So yes, for Biden and Harris, vote.
Yeah, there we are.
Also, I think another thing is that they're going to surround themselves with people who are going to give them knowledge, who are going to be strong leaders in and of themselves. I mean, so it's going to be a whole, administration of knowledgeable, empathetic people who are socially minded and socially conscious, which is part of, there's not going to be any enablers like now. This whole administration is filled with nefarious enablers, which is part of the problem. Like, Trump can't do all this damage on his own.
Right.
So not to let him off the hook, but he's been able to do this damage because he has some seriously powerful people standing next to him.
And an embrace of science.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How important is that, right?
And I was going to say also, Biden and Harris will surround themselves with experienced people for those roles, as opposed to what we have now. People who it would make sense are hired to do the things they're going to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a thought.
Sophia,
what a concept.
Sophia, what's
Yes.
it like being a mom now, with bringing a kid into this world and looking to the future, and your renewed investment in the future beyond all of us, right? That's powerful.
Absolutely, Jay. I was going to mention that, so I'm glad you brought it up. But you can't prepare for parenthood. You can't prepare for motherhood really until you're in it and you realize, okay, my life has changed and everything is about my son. And I've always been an advocate and tried to put myself in positions to share and empower disabled stories. But now that I have a son, I cannot not feel the need to change the world for the better for him and uplift what his generation will change for the better too. I believe that all the babies of 2020 are going to change the world, and they're going to just make it all better for us, Logan included. So I'm really excited, actually, and as crazy as these times are, I do see so many pockets of opportunity of change, and I'm very optimistic. And yes, as Alexandria said, vote, vote, vote. This is the most important time to vote.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
You five. This is amazing. What is it? You got more here, Gardiner?
We've come to a really positive moment in this conversation. I think because we're all, positive, optimistic, excited, talented people. We started this conversation recalling the debate last night, and it was depressing. Last night was awful, and I get such enthusiasm out of engaging with smart, talented people who want to make the world a better place. And so now my day that previously had been, upended, even though I'm writing letters to voters and calling voters and volunteering and wanting to be a poll worker and taking action because we can win, I was now feeling good today. And now after talking to all of you about all this stuff and thinking about Biden and Harris in the White House, I feel so much more positive and realistically positive. So we're going to do it.
May I just say,
I'm
sorry. I was just going to say that what we have today is the power of conversation, the power of caring,
exchange of
power
ideas.
of exchange of ideas, the power of intelligence, the power of heart, and the power of the desire to speak with each other, desire to learn from each other. And I think that's extraordinarily optimistic and exactly what was missing from the debate. Mm-hmm. There was even when Biden tried to express something, it's like having things thrown at you while you're trying to say something to somebody, as if to say, whether I hit you or not, I'm obviously not listening to you. And I
brain dead megaphone.
We need to be reminded that we have conversation and that we are it. We perpetuate it. We are the power that we are seeking to advance. And this is you five are a fantastic example of that. So I'm very honored to be here with you. Ryan, I can see you want to say something.
I do. I just think that Biden and Harris, among one of the many things that they're going to do to fix what was recently broken, fix what has been broken, and bring us toward a better place. One of the most important and most immediate things I know Biden and Harris will do is get our country and get us, the people here on this call, back to a place where we can have this conversation in person.
Yes.
Where we can hug each other, where we can connect and be together, which we have been deprived of. Our whole livelihoods have been taken away because of ineptitude. And we need belief in science, and we need to be back on track for our economy, for our well-beings and our livelihoods, but also for our social, mental, and emotional health. Because humans are not meant to be isolated the way that we have been forced to be isolated, in a way that other countries have improved, other countries are moving forward, they've reopened. We can't do that because we don't have leadership. And Biden and Harris are going to give us that leadership.
Jay, can I say two quick things?
Of course.
Number one, just to build on what Ryan just said, artists are healers, and we haven't been allowed to be healers in the way that we know how to be healers, which is to connect with people, right? That's what Ryan was. We're trying to do it over Zoom, and yes, we're doing it. But I for one, can't wait until we're able to help heal other people in the way that we know how to do. Yeah. And secondarily, I want to just talk about voting and disability for 1 second, and just call to action to those disabled folks who happen to be listening or watching this panel. Is like, it's so important for our community to vote. And I know that our community has more issues than some around voting. If you are unsure about, if you feel unsafe going and voting in person, vote by mail. But if you need help navigating that, there's so much help out there. And please don't feel why my brain is suddenly shut off. Someone help me. I'm trying
don't
to think.
Feel your voice doesn't matter.
Yes, don't feel your voice doesn't matter, and don't feel ashamed or embarrassed about reaching out
or intimidated.
Yes,
that's the big word right now. There is so many people trying to imply intimidation, which does not really exist except up here.
That's right.
And we are here to remind you that we are all part of the same movement forward and the same heart going forward. And we encourage you, do not be intimidated. Yeah. If it means that you need to take someone by the hand who you love and find a way forward, do it. Do it.
And Democrats win when Democrats vote.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
All of you, I thank you.
Thank you.
I hug you.
Thank you.
And
get out the vote. Vote, Alexandria.
What is that? Teach us that, Alexandria. What is that again? Sign for vote. Vote.
Yes.
All right.
Vote.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
I love it. Thank you all so much. This has been wonderful. Thanks,
Yeah,
Jay.
thank
It's
you
been
all.
great.
Well,
Thank you so
My pleasure.
much.
Thank you.